After taking a DNA test, I discovered my wife, Melissa, had been unfaithful. The father of our children turned out to be her personal trainer. The court allowed Melissa to stay in our home until the children finished high school, leaving me with the mortgage and utility payments. She also received half of my business's value, and I was obligated to continue paying for her vehicle. Melissa took 60% of our possessions, including bank accounts, investments, and retirement funds. She secured primary custody of the children, giving me standard visitation rights, which amounted to 2 consecutive weeks in the summer and every other weekend. Child support was set at $800 per child, totaling $1,600 monthly. Since she hadn't worked in 6 years, she was awarded $2,300 per month in spousal maintenance. The divorce would be finalized in 90 days unless I retracted the petition. Judge Ellen Carter banged her gavel and began to rise, but I couldn't stop myself from muttering a word that would drastically change the next months of my life. I questioned what was so difficult and offered to clarify if she found it challenging. The judge froze, her head snapping towards me as if I had committed a grave offense. She sat back down, her face shifting from shock to pure rage. She warned me she knew what was coming and gave me 1 minute to apologize or face contempt of court. I retorted, expressing my disdain, and my lawyer hissed at me to be quiet, frantically searching for something to calm me down. The judge slammed her gavel again and threatened me with 30 days in jail for contempt. I sarcastically suggested 60 days and added that perhaps she needed to relax more. I raised both middle fingers and told her to use them for her own pleasure. My outburst was met with shock, and the judge sentenced me to 90 days in jail. In lockup, I received a letter from my lawyer's firm saying they were dropping me as a client. It was no surprise. Let me give you some background. I'm Tom Anderson, 34 years old, from a middle-class family in the South, where respect and honor were paramount. I was raised with strong values: work hard, be generous, and stay true to your word. Betrayal was not something I forgave easily. In high school, after an argument with my girlfriend Lisa and finding her with my cousin Mark, I cut ties with both. Even years later, I held a grudge, which led to me ignoring his wedding invitation. I believe in facing the consequences of actions. If someone makes a mistake, they should deal with the repercussions. I worked hard in school, achieved good grades, and went to college. After earning my degree in economics and an MBA, I found success in investing. I met Melissa at a party, and we quickly became a couple. We married, and she left her job to become a homemaker while I thrived professionally. We had twins, and life seemed perfect. However, during our daughter's 2nd birthday party, I overheard a conversation that made me question their paternity. This led me to hire a private investigator who confirmed my worst fears. Melissa was still seeing her personal trainer. I decided to act, protecting my assets and preparing for divorce while keeping the children's welfare in mind. I carefully planned my departure, moving my belongings and setting up a new place. I withdrew all our money, leaving just a small amount in the accounts. I then moved my possessions and prepared to serve Melissa with divorce papers. The video of her reaction was captured, showing her shock. Her attempts to reach me and confront my former colleagues only heightened the situation. Despite her actions, I stayed firm and continued to handle the legal proceedings while focusing on securing my future. I left only the bare minimum in our accounts. Melissa relied on her parents for support while I kept a low profile, avoiding new projects and ensuring nothing she could seize was left behind. Eventually, she hired a lawyer and meetings were scheduled. I instructed my lawyer not to give her a penny more. The meetings didn't go well, leading to arbitration. During arbitration, questions about the money arose. Melissa demanded to know where all the money had gone. I replied, "What money? We're flat broke. I'm living in the cheapest 1-bedroom apartment I could find." The investments, checking, and savings had disappeared due to a disastrous investment. Investing in a cheating spouse, I thought bitterly. Offshore banks held the funds, now out of her reach. We were giving her the house with her name on the title. My lawyer suggested he could have been more forceful, but it was like observing a tornado hit a house and noting that at least the rubble wasn't on fire. The mortgage was maxed out, and I couldn't afford the payments. Melissa screamed, and it all went downhill from there. Child support? Not my kids, not my problem. Spousal maintenance? No job, no income. She demanded 70% of the liquid assets. There were none. 50% of the business? Good luck. 150% of the retirement? All gone. Arbitration failed spectacularly, leading us to court before Judge Ellen Carter, a notorious Manhattan judge. I knew I was screwed. If you think I could convince them there was no money, you'd be wrong. They could check accounts, but the judge used those numbers to calculate my liabilities. They had no way to access the funds. I needed time to move money through various banks and accounts. I withdrew everything from one bank and spread the cash across several accounts at different banks. These accounts were under various names, thanks to one of Lisa's family's shadier businesses, a gag gift shop that sold fake IDs for entertainment purposes. I even had an ID claiming I was Jesus Christ, which cost about $150 and was expertly crafted, with the only giveaway being the entertainment statement. For a higher fee, they leave out the warning. I also electronically transferred money to other accounts. Although this was traceable, it was time-consuming and costly. Back in front of the Manhattan judge, 60 days into my 90-day county jail sentence. Short-term sentences are served in county jail, not state prison. She sneered and asked if I'd learned my lesson yet. I replied that I learned not to marry a cheating spouse long before her court. She clarified that she was referring to my attitude in her court. With the vein on her forehead throbbing dangerously, I dismissed any issues with my attitude and expressed concern for her health, suggesting her blood pressure must spike during doctor visits. She warned me that she could extend my stay in jail, adding another 30 days given my attitude. She then questioned why I hadn't made my first 2 child support or maintenance payments to my ex-wife and inquired about the absence of my lawyer, implying they had abandoned me. Frustrated, she sarcastically thanked me for correcting her on the intelligence requirement for being a judge and offered to explain things like she would to a 5th grader. I started to think she actually despised me. I'm in jail. I have no access to money, I said. Because I have no access to money, I can't send any. Since it was your decision to put me here, you should explain why the cheating woman can't get the money she was trying to steal from me. Do you understand? Or should I slow it down for you? I was escorted back to my cell for another 90 days, 30 from my original sentence, 30 from her first tantrum, and another 30 I managed to rack up at the end. To be honest, it wasn't that bad. Sure, the food was awful, but I ate it. I had a decent bed to sleep in and lots of free time. I made good use of the weights and exercise equipment. I didn't have many problems inside. First, my courtroom antics quickly became common knowledge in the jail, earning me a few friends. Second, Lisa's family had some useful connections inside. There was only one problem: Melissa's less intelligent cousin. He thought it would be a good idea to get arrested for a minor offense and spend a week in jail to teach me a lesson. The entire jail population recognized him before he even set foot inside. It didn't take much brain power to figure out his intentions. Spotted halfway across the yard, an inmate accidentally collided with him while tossing a football, elbowing him in the gut. Undeterred, he continued his quest but was then struck by a basketball. The passer apologized profusely, and another accidental elbow to the chin followed. After shaking off the incidents, he resumed his trek toward me. With my back turned, he tried to sucker punch me, but I anticipated it. I spun around and delivered a forceful kick to his groin, a clear 65-yard field goal. His accumulated misfortunes landed him in the infirmary 2 days later. He refused yard exercise and spent most of his time in his cell until he was released. Back in court, Judge Carter inquired if I was ready to apologize. I asked for what. She specified my vile courtroom outbursts. I responded, "I really don't know what you're talking about." Dismissively, she warned me to keep a civil tongue or face an extended stay. I expressed frustration, mentioning that another judge might take over and that she was on my last nerve. Sarcastically, I suggested I might start stomping my feet and perhaps she'd need an EMT in the courtroom if she had a stroke. I pointed out that no child support, maintenance, mortgage, or utility payments had been made as ordered. I explained that I couldn't pay anything while jailed, couldn't work, and emphasized that the kids were not mine. I added that my ex-wife was a cheat and should pay for her own life, maybe charge for it. Addressing another issue, I stated that I had given her half the business and she should have plenty of money. Melissa's lawyer interjected, explaining that they had been unable to take possession of her part of the business. Mr. Anderson had sold his company to an overseas entity about 2 months before filing for divorce, and they hadn't determined the actual owners. Suddenly, an attractive woman approached, stating she represented the board of directors for the firm that purchased the business. She moved to dismiss the ruling giving Mrs. Anderson any part of the business owned by her ex-husband. So she argued that it was irregular to award ownership without the business's involvement since the purchase predated the divorce. This company had no bearing on the case, and they rejected any claim of ownership by Mrs. Anderson. Someone queried about the money from the sale. The young woman explained that the transfer of ownership and payment were conducted overseas. I'm not privy to that information, but my understanding is that the money from the purchase never entered U.S. territory, making it not subject to U.S. laws. Any claim on that money needs to be addressed with your ex-husband, possibly in the country where the money is located. Melissa's lawyer pressed on, asking which country that was. The young woman replied, the initial transfer was to Belgium, but it was moved shortly after. I don't know where it went after that. My ex-lawyer, growing more desperate, pointed out that the house was nearing foreclosure since the mortgage hadn't been paid for 3 months and the utilities were about to be cut off. He mentioned that Melissa's parents had helped initially, but it was becoming too much for them. Despite finding work as a waitress at a local diner, Melissa's income wasn't sufficient to keep up with the bills. The judge turned to me, saying I had 1 week to catch up on all overdue payments. With a heavy dose of sarcasm, I suggested she show me how to pull cash out of thin air. I reminded her that I was in jail with no access to funds and couldn't work to earn any money. It was absurd to expect me to make payments under these circumstances. I pointed out that I didn't have a lawyer because I was financially broke and questioned the existence of the mysterious accounts they were accusing me of hiding. Even if such accounts existed, I had no information to access them. I challenged anyone to provide details of these alleged accounts and questioned the supposed money from our checking, savings, and investment accounts. I explained that my company had been in poor shape due to previous bad investments, forcing me to sell it at a loss to cover expenses, leaving no money left over. Seeing the court's skepticism, I shrugged, indifferent to whether they believed me. I suggested my ex-wife might have taken the money while cavorting with her boyfriends. Her lawyer objected, saying my accusation didn't make sense. I shot back, it makes as much sense as keeping me in jail without access to money and demanding I make payments. The judge warned me she could keep me in jail until I paid. I stared at her incredulously and sarcastically replied, it makes perfect sense to keep me where I couldn't comply with their demands while insisting I meet those demands. 3 months later, the house went into foreclosure, and Melissa lost her Lexus due to non-payment. Unable to afford an apartment, she moved back in with her parents, working 30 hours a week at the diner. Desperate, they begged the judge to release me so I could start making payments. Meanwhile, her lover, now out of the hospital and undergoing physical therapy, struggled to fix his financial mess. His trash credit rating prevented new credit card accounts from being opened in his name, and with minimal insurance coverage on his car and part-time work at the gym, he faced high medical bills and deductibles, making it a slow process to pay off his debts. I managed to secure a lawyer and struck a deal with the judge for my release to find work and start making payments. I had to surrender my passport due to suspicions of hidden funds and flight risk. I started working at a local fast food restaurant and moved in with Mark and Lisa at their ranch. Although I knew I was being watched, most of the cash was already hidden. For the next 3 months, Melissa got a court order to garnish my minimum wage, which provided her with very little. During this period, I finalized my plans with Mark. While I was in jail, he emptied my apartment and divided my belongings among our extended family. Packages were sent to a common location undetected by surveillance. Visitors discreetly moved packages during family gatherings and barbecues. I spent my days working or staying at home, avoiding going out. The restaurant eventually obtained a restraining order against Melissa for her constant disruptions. A discreet payment to the manager ensured I kept my job. My lawyer, who initially represented the new owners of my former company, started visiting me at the ranch. Eventually, I hired her as my attorney. She was as fierce as a barracuda, especially during our poolside meetings. Ignoring ethical concerns about our lawyer-client relationship, I joked that lawyers treated scruples as negotiable currency, with morals being nothing more than large paintings on walls. "So you're curious about my finances?" I asked. "Yes, I did sell my firm." "No, I didn't sell it to myself. I had no intention of letting Melissa get any piece of the firm. I was divesting from it by conducting the sale overseas. I ensured the money stayed out of U.S. jurisdiction and beyond Melissa's reach. Bringing any of it into a U.S. bank would expose it to her claims due to the judgments against me. That simply wasn't an option. The sum was substantial, and with my investment accounts, it amounted to around $10 million. I had about $200,000 in cash from various sources, including safety deposit boxes, checking and savings accounts, and safes. I ensured some of this cash went into my plans, but I still had about $150,000 on hand. Some of this cash went into, with no intention of taking the cash with me, I planned a final move on a sunny Saturday afternoon. We hosted a big barbecue with the extended family. Everything was set for a memorable gathering. I helped Mark with the grill and smoker, and Amanda, my lawyer, mingled with the guests. With no intention of taking the cash with me, I planned. Later in the afternoon, one of Lisa's uncles approached me, expressing gratitude for helping Lisa and Mark and for reconnecting with them. We chatted, and he discreetly handed me an envelope, which I passed to Amanda for safekeeping. Later in the afternoon, as the evening progressed, I made a grand announcement. The lien holder for the ranch had confirmed that the mortgage was fully paid off, and Mark and Lisa now owned the ranch free and clear. The news triggered an explosion of celebration. We partied late into the night. As the guests started to leave, Amanda mentioned she had an early flight the next morning and left with a group of 6 other cars. Her flight was out of an airport in the next state. She had packed earlier and had everything ready in her leased car. When she arrived at the party, instead of returning to her rented apartment, she headed straight to the airport. No one noticed the man climbing out of the back of her car in the parking garage, or the man casually walking 50 feet behind her as they made their way to the international terminal. As the guests started to leave, Tom Anderson couldn't travel outside the U.S. because he had surrendered his passport to the court, but Jason Williams's passport didn't raise any eyebrows. No one even glanced at the couple holding hands as they boarded their first-class flight to Mexico City. Amanda White disappeared there, and in her place, Erica Williams joined Jason Williams for their connecting flight to Ecuador. Tom Anderson couldn't travel outside the U.S. 2 days later, Greg and Emma Johnson arrived at their new hacienda on the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica. Along the way, they had become members of the Mile High Club. Strangely, an old Chevy pickup resembling the one that vanished from Mark and Lisa's ranch awaited them. 2 days later, Greg and 2 weeks after the barbecue, a bench warrant was issued for Tom Anderson. He was fired 2 days after the barbecue for a no-show, no-call, with no payments made to his ex-wife. Since then, Mark and Lisa faced the court. A lawyer in a sharp suit argued that the couple had no responsibility for their cousin, who had rented a room and then disappeared. They even filed a suit against him for back rent. All they could say was that he drove off in his old pickup one afternoon and never returned. Though skepticism was high, there was no proof to contradict their story. Since over the next several years, Tom Adams ran a small charter fishing business, and Emma managed their cozy beachside cantina. They thrived in the small village, living in one of the larger haciendas and enjoying several luxuries. Guests visited from time to time, including Mark, Lisa, and other family members. It was a simple, delightful life for Greg and Emma, who were deeply in love. Most evenings, they hosted friends and neighbors in the cantina or their lavish hacienda. Their wealth and friendliness quickly earned them a place in the community. Whenever a need arose, they donated generously. Greg dabbled in the stock market when not out on his boat or in the cantina, even setting up accounts for some locals and helping them manage their finances. As for Judge Ellen Carter, life threw her a curveball a few years after my escape to Costa Rica. Her wife, known for her disdain for men, was caught having an affair with a man. The judge had adopted her wife's 3 children when they married. Following their split, Judge Carter was ordered to pay child support, alimony, and house payments to her ex-wife, adding to her humiliation. Her ex-wife quickly moved her boyfriend into the house, continuing their affair openly. Though not officially married, they They behaved like a typical couple. Rumors swirled about their planned wedding date, which was exactly 1 week after their youngest child graduated from college, coinciding with the end of Judge Carter's financial obligations.